Sugar Ray Leonard versus Floyd Money Mayweather. Going out to a sporting view. Let's get into it. I'm sure I've covered this fight before in a previous video, but there are fights that I will cover again and do another video on as my knowledge increases or as I gain more perspective of the sport. And sometimes I just need to offer a better explanation. And sometimes my mind may change. You just never know. So, Sugar Ray Leonard versus Floyd Money Mayweather. Let's get into it. This will be a high-speed chess match at 147. And I believe that the fight will be a lot closer than most people would imagine. And now, most fighters probably think that Sugar Ray Leonard just goes in there and demolishes Floyd Money Mayweather. But those of us who knows just a little about the sport knows that it's not that simple. That legendary status doesn't automatically guarantee you the win. There's a good argument that could be made for Sugar Ray Leonard winning the fight. I mean, let's talk about his blazing hand speed, his amazing footwork, his versatility, his ability to fight off the back foot as well as coming forward. The guy was a true phenomenon. And I couldn't count the punches that he threw when he threw his blazing combinations. So Sugar Ray Leonard, no one should question his greatness. It's obvious. And of course, he's one of the members of the Fabulous Four. I always want to say Fantastic Four. So feel free to correct me if I ever say Fantastic Four. He's one of the members of the Fabulous Four and fought everybody who was anybody. And of course, there's those one or two opponents that fans may have wanted to see him fight that he didn't fight. That doesn't do anything to his legacy. And I'm referring to Aaron Pryor. But that's for another video. Let's move on to Floyd Money Mayweather, the fighter that most fans love to hate. Most people don't like his personality, his flashiness, the way that he flaunts his money, his success, and some of the things that he says. But none of that has any bearings or diminishes what he does inside of the ring. I mean, it is what it is. People complain about his level of opposition. He's often accused of cherry picking, which is a weak argument in my opinion. There's no evidence that he cherry picked his whole career. And the reality is, Floyd Money Mayweather fought his way to the top, and his resume is impeccable. And so if he was cherry picking, those were some good cherries, let me tell you. So there's some factors we have to consider going into this fight. Sugar Ray Leonard definitely has more power than Floyd. He throws more punches. He's more flashy. He does have the better resume of the two. Has fought the more dangerous opponents. And so Sugar Ray Leonard is more seasoned. Better footwork. Whereas the Floyd Money Mayweather, well, let me just say this. What gives him a chance in this fight, and a big chance, is his ability to adjust. There's nothing that Floyd hasn't seen that he couldn't adjust to. And that's major. And Floyd's timing. Floyd's counterpunching. And really, his timing is the secret to his success. The secret sauce. Because the way Floyd fights, he makes his opponents drop their punch outputs. Because he doesn't provide that consistent target. He doesn't provide that target that they need to get those shots off. So what we're used to seeing certain fighters do against other opponents, it's very hard to do against Floyd. Floyd is not undefeated by accident. He's not undefeated because of so-called cherry picking. I mean, Floyd knows what he's doing in there, knew what he was doing in there. Master boxer, master puncher. I think Floyd has the better defense. Floyd is more disciplined. Floyd is better at sticking to the game plan, which is key, which was another key to his success. Secret sauce. Okay. So who takes it? Who takes this fight at welterweight, at 147? Both of them at their best. Well, one advantage that Leonard has is he's a natural welterweight, whereas Floyd climbed up to welterweight. So that's one thing that Leonard has working in his favor. Leonard's dangerous. I mean, he could really get Floyd into trouble if he trapped Floyd into one of his whirlwind flurries. He definitely could. But as far as Floyd is concerned, one thing we have to consider, the shoulder roll, the Philly shell defense. So, as I mentioned, what we're used to seeing certain fighters do against other opponents, it's hard to pull off against Floyd. So one question we have to ask ourselves, would Leonard be throwing those flurries against Floyd? Would Leonard be willing to hit air to get to Floyd? Once again, the way Floyd fights, he's a defensive master. And he has the shoulder roll working for him. He can roll a lot of those shots. He can make Sugar Ray Leonard gun shy, yet it's a possibility in the counter punching of Floyd Money Mayweather. I think you know where I'm going with this. I see Floyd Money Mayweather winning by split decision. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you on the next video. There are certain fighters that fans love to hate. And if you're a fan of these particular fighters, you're going to get some flack. And let me just say, it's not for the faint of heart to be a fan of some fighters. And if you're going to debate on behalf of that fighter or come to their defense, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be strong. You have to be firm. And you just have to bring facts. And even then, some people will not be convinced. 3 fighters I'm going to mention. And I am a fan of these guys. Here we go. Floyd Money Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez, and Deontay Wilder. And the reason I'm a fan of these guys is these guys are fighting often, and these guys are getting it done. If any of you watched enough of my videos, you all know that I'm so over this undefeated thing. So a fighter doesn't have to be undefeated for me to be a fan, for me to come to their defense, and just to be great. You can have a great career and you can achieve greatness without being undefeated. And obviously, Floyd is the only undefeated fighter out of these 3. Floyd, Canelo, and Deontay. But what's backwards sometimes is fans give the most flack to the active fighters while they make excuses for the fighters who aren't active. The fighters who are going out of their way to pad their records, to keep their records padded, staying out of the ring 2 years at a time, being inactive for 2 years at a time. Those are the guys that the fans need to get on. Those are the ones they need to give the smoke to. For lack of a better term, I'm behind on my slang and my sayings, but anyway. So as far as Floyd is concerned, Floyd worked his way from the bottom and fought his way to the top. Canelo fights often, and he's positioned himself or put himself in a position to call his own shots. And Deontay has a warrior's heart, okay? We may not like all the things these guys have to say. We might not not always agree with their choice of opponents. But because of those things that I mentioned, they deserve more credit. Now, we can go on and on about Wilder's losses to Fury. We can dwell on that. We can use those to discredit him. But he was competitive in that last fight. And what we must remember and not forget or get amnesia about is he managed to drop Fury 4 times in 3 fights. That counts for something, or it should count for something. So we look for any little thing to discredit these guys. Canelo doesn't fight the guy we want him to fight, or we think he should fight, or everyone who fights Canelo magically turns into a cherry pick. If Canelo fought King Kong, King Kong would be a cherry pick. If Canelo fought Godzilla, Godzilla would be a cherry pick. If he fought Godzilla, he'd be fighting Godzilla to duck King Kong. If he fought King Kong, he'd be fighting King Kong to duck Godzilla. You all get where I'm going? Now, we can have our opinions, okay? You have the right to not like a fighter. I have the right to not like a fighter. But be reasonable. Let's keep it within the realm of reason. Don't go overboard. Don't go over the top with your hate for a certain fighter. Don't go over the top with your praise for a certain fighter. And we should do our best to be objective. And my thing is, what more do we want from fighters who have been active, who have actually fought the top competition? And a lot of fans go in on Wilder about his resume. Look, his 3 fights with Fury is no small accomplishments. He fought Fury 3 times. He fought Ortiz twice. Other names on his resume. But let's be real about his resume. He's fought some quality competition. I mean, let's give credit where credit is due, okay? So I can go on and on about this. But one thing I want to say this to Floyd, Canelo, and Deontay. If I ever meet you all better give me an autograph and take a picture with me, because I take a lot of beatings for you guys, okay? I have been abused in these boxing groups, on these boxing forums, coming to your defense. And I say that jokingly. It's a labor of love. And so